Chapter 2180. Khan. Now that the rumors have been spread and the frost has fallen, the herdsmen on the grassland are all restless and discussing Shieli in private. But why haven't the leaders of the other tribes made any moves? Especially the 10-tribe coalition that has surrounded us. They still show no signs of withdrawing. In Tuli's tent, Shirtua and Tuli were analyzing the current situation of the grassland. At this time, Shirtua said with some melancholy. After seeing the vast expanse of white frost on the grassland yesterday morning, he and Tuli were so happy that they almost jumped up. If it weren't for the fact that the timing was not right, they would have held a banquet to reward the three armies and not return until they were drunk. But their excitement didn't last long, because as time went by, the situation they had expected at first didn't appear. The tribes on the grassland who were dissatisfied with Shieli didn't take the opportunity to launch an attack. At most, the herdsmen in the tribes were discussing Shieli because of the frost falling from the sky. Not a single tribe made any real moves. This made Tuli and Shirtua very anxious. Because whether the grassland could fall into chaos because of this was directly related to whether they could escape the encirclement and smoothly go south to seek refuge with the Tang Empire. Therefore, their state of mind changed from the excitement yesterday morning to the slight uneasiness in the afternoon. And today, they were even a little anxious. Shieli has ruled the grassland for many years. The strength under his command is far from what any tribe can compare to. In addition, in order to unify the grassland, he has destroyed countless tribes. His methods are extremely cruel. Which tribe on the grassland isn't afraid of him now? Although the prophecy of frost falling from the sky has come true and Shieli has lost all the people on the grassland and some tribes have become restless because of this, the power of one or several tribes is still too insignificant. Before they have enough power to unite, the tribal chiefs of those tribes don't dare to openly rebel against Shieli. Tuli looked out of the tent with a gloomy gaze and couldn't help but sigh as he spoke slowly. In fact, he had been waiting for the people outside to send news of the turmoil on the grassland. But reason told him that things couldn't progress so fast because Shieli's strength was really too strong. The tribal chiefs of those tribes weren't fools. They couldn't jump up to rebel against Shieli just because of a prophecy. That was no different from courting death. Now, everyone was waiting. Waiting for someone to take the lead and raise their arms. At that time, the grassland might fall into true turmoil. Khan, you mean we have to keep waiting? When Shirtua heard this, his eyes widened and he said anxiously. That's right, Tuli said indifferently, right now, we can only wait. Shirtua said anxiously, but the tribe's warriors can't hold on for much longer. I'm afraid our rations can only last for 3 more days. If we can't break out of the encirclement and rendezvous with the Tang army outside the southern plains, our 100,000 men will starve to death even if we aren't killed by the Great Khan's men. Only 3 days? Upon hearing this, Tuli could not help but clench his fists. In fact, he was more anxious than anyone else, but was there any use in being anxious? His subordinates had been surrounded by the 10 allied armies and over 300,000 warriors. At this moment, he was like a beast trapped in a cage. He could only hope that the hunters outside the cage would start fighting so that he could seize the opportunity to escape. He could only wait. Even though they knew that they didn't have enough provisions, they could only wait. It wasn't that he didn't want to send people to break out of the encirclement. Previously, his people had tried countless times to open a gap in the encirclement, but in the end, they had all failed and suffered heavy losses. If they tried to break out now, it would only increase the number of casualties, and the result wouldn't change at all. Is there any movement on Tang Jian's side? After a long silence, Tuli suddenly asked. Replying to the Great Khan. Ever since Tang Jian changed his tent, his days have been even more carefree than before. We're still worried about the news from the front line, but he's living well. He's been drinking wine and having beautiful women all day long. He's living very comfortably. Upon hearing Tuli mention Tang Jian, Shirtua's face suddenly became indignant and he couldn't help but criticize. Speaking of which, after the frost fell yesterday morning, Tuli knew that his plan had succeeded by more than half. He was in an incomparably good mood. Therefore, He ordered people to settle Tang Jian and the others in the best tent, gave them the best food, the best wine, and also sent the best beauties in the tribe to serve them. He practically treated Tang Jian as the tribe's honored guest. Compared to the treatment Tang Jian received at the beginning, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. It couldn't be helped. After witnessing the realization of the frost prophecy, Tuli knew that he had hope of escaping. After he escaped, he still had to lead his troops to surrender to the Tang Empire. Tang Jian was the Tang Empire's Duke of Zhou and an important minister of the imperial court. After he surrendered to the Tang Empire, he would inevitably have to rely on Tang Jian in many places. Therefore, he had no choice but to carefully serve Tang Jian. Enrich Shirtua's face was full of indignation. After hearing Enrich Shirtua's words, Tuli's gloomy face eased up. He muttered to himself, "That's good. That's good." He thought that as long as Tang Jian remained calm and didn't panic, it meant that the situation hadn't deteriorated to the point of no return. It must be known that when the frost prophecy was spread, Tuli's heart was even more uncertain than it was now. However, at that time, Tang Jian looked calm and at ease, not worried at all that the prophecy would come true. In the end, the heavens really did come at the end of the 7th month and sent frost to the prairie. As soon as he thought of this, Tuli's restless heart suddenly calmed down. He now had a kind of honey confidence in Tang Jian. As long as Tang Jian didn't panic, he wouldn't panic. What? Enrich Shirtua faintly heard Tuli's muttering. He couldn't help but open his eyes wide, wondering if he had misheard. He thought that old guy Tang Jia was living a carefree and happy life in their camp. How could it be a good thing in the Khan's eyes? Tuli shook his head and didn't explain further. At this moment, a voice came from outside the tent, reporting to the Khan, "General Demotsi of Shui Yintua's tribe requests an audience." Demotsi? Upon hearing this, Tuli's body suddenly shook, and a trace of astonishment flashed in his eyes. He and Enrich Shirtua looked at each other, then quickly sat up straight and ordered outside the tent, "Invite General Demotsi in." Demotsi was not only the general of Shui Yintua's tribe, but also the nephew of a barbarian man. Although he was only in his teens, he had divine strength since childhood. Not only was he rarely a match among the younger generation of the tribe, but few people in the army who were older than him could beat him. Therefore, at such a young age, Demotsi had become a general that the barbarian man relied heavily on. According to the historical process, after the Tang dynasty destroyed Shui Yintua, the remaining Shui Yintua people supported Demotsi as Itwushi Khan in an attempt to restore Shui Yintua. However, the Tang dynasty and the Tiela tribes didn't recognize it. Li Er sent Li Ji to attack Demotsi's encampment and instructed, "If you surrender, you'll be pacified. If you rebel, you'll be punished." Li Ji went to the Overseer Mountain. His chief, Tijenda, led his people to surrender, but secretly plotted to rise again. Li Ji then sent his troops to attack, beheaded more than 5,000 people, captured more than 30,000 men and women, and brought Demotsi back to Chang'an. After Tuli heard that Demotsi was requesting an audience, he guessed that Shui Yintua's tribe would take action. However, he couldn't understand why the barbarian man sent Demotsi over at this time. Could it be that the other party was now ready to confront Xieli? Otherwise, why would the barbarian man dare to send people here so openly? Demotsi greets little Khan. Tuli didn't have to wait for long. While he was deep in thought, the curtain of the tent was lifted, and a young man with braids and slightly bronzed skin walked in. It was Demotsi. Demotsi entered the tent and bowed to Tuli in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. "General Demotsi, you don't have to be so polite." Tuli raised his right hand. After Demotsi straightened up, he went straight to the point and asked, "I wonder what General Demotsi is here for?" Tuli didn't have much interaction with Shui Yintua's tribe before, and he was even less familiar with Demotsi. He had only heard of his name, but had never seen him in person, let alone have any friendship. Therefore, Tuli didn't want to waste time to exchange pleasantries, but went straight to the point. Demotsi was a straightforward person. Hearing Tuli's question, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Then he cupped his fists and said to Tuli, Demotzi has come to convey the goodwill of Shui Yintua's tribe to Little Khan. Chapter 2181. Who in the prairie doesn't know the fighting power of the Swanee 7 tribes? General Enai Shirji is a famous fierce general in the prairie. How could Demotzi dare to bully you? In Tuli's tent, seeing Enai Shirji getting angry, Demotzi hurriedly flattered him with a face full of fear and trepidation. The Swanee tribe was Tuli's direct army, and the Swanee tribe could be said to be the most powerful tribe in the entire prairie. At first, there were dozens of tribes in the Swanee tribe, and later, it gradually developed into 7 tribes. They were mainly distributed in the Sumo River and Blackwater area. Among these 7 tribes, the Sumo Swanee and Blackwater Swanee were the most powerful. And Enai Shirji was the chief of the Swanee Blackwater tribe. Humph. A bunch of hypocrites. Enai Shirji snorted coldly, looked at Demotzi, and said with a face full of disdain, "You say you don't dare, but now you're here to threaten the Little Khan. If the barbarian man really wants to fight, the 100,000 warriors of the Swanee 7 tribes will fight with him to their heart's content." Being pointed at and scolded, especially by a defeated general, or rather, a general who was about to be defeated, Demotzi's face was somewhat ugly. However, when he thought of the mission that the barbarian man had given him before he came here, he could only temporarily suppress the anger in his heart. His slightly furrowed brows quickly relaxed. He smiled slightly and said, "That's right." "Ha! What is General Enai Shirji talking about? Demotzi came here with the friendship of my Shui Yintua tribe. Over the years, the Great Khan has relied on his tyrannical strength to go on expeditions and collect taxes on the prairie. A while ago, he implemented the Han official system, causing the people of the prairie to seethe with resentment. The reason why the Tiela 10 tribe surrounded the Little Khan was also because they were threatened by Shieli. However, no matter what, our common enemy should be Shieli, and we should not be killing each other here. Although the Little Khan's men are incomparably elite and all of them are fearless of death, you have been besieged for such a long time, your men and horses are already tired, and your provisions are almost exhausted. My chief can't bear to harm his own people, so he tried to find a way to survive for the Little Khan. In the end, after many persuasions, all the chiefs of the Tiela 10 tribes agreed to take the risk and let the Little Khan's men leave the prairie. Of course, we also have some selfish motives because we let the Little Khan leave without permission, and it will definitely anger Shieli. Next, I'm afraid that Shieli will soon lead his troops to attack our Tiela 10 tribes, so we hope that after the Little Khan joins the Tang Empire, he can lead the Tang army to invade the prairie and attack with us. Seeing that the hard way didn't work, Demotzi had no choice but to use the soft way. The main reason was that the old man Enai Shirtua was too stubborn. If he really angered him and caused the Bai and 7 tribes to fight to the death with Shui Yintua's tribe, then it would be a big joke. When he returned, wouldn't the barbarian man skin him alive? On the other hand, calculating the time, the rest of the Tiela 9 tribes should be arriving soon. As soon as those people arrived, they would withdraw their respective tribes' troops and horses. Wouldn't his previous nonsense with Enai Shirtua and Tuli be exposed? At that time, not only would Tuli and Shui Yintua's tribe become enemies, the rest of the Tiela 9 tribes would also blame Shui Yintua's tribe for secretly smuggling goods. That's right, the barbarian man sent Demotzi to force Tuli to swear in the name of Tingri and hand over his only son to Shui Yintua's tribe as a hostage. This was smuggling goods. The barbarian man wanted to completely strangle the uncertainty of whether Tuli would lead the Tang army to the prairie as soon as possible, and he also wanted to hold the card of Tuli's son in his own hands. After all, the strength of the Bai and 7 tribes couldn't be underestimated. If Tuli really led the Tang army to the prairie in the future, the strength in his hands and the warriors of the Bai and 7 tribes under his command might all be used by him because of this card. Chapter 2182. Inside the tent, Tuli looked into Tang Jian's eyes with a nervous and anxious expression. His burning gaze was like a deeply affectionate man gazing at his lover. Cough cough Tang Jian felt his scalp go numb. In fact, it wasn't that Tuli didn't know the severity of the matter. Tuli was naturally very willing to exchange one person's life for the survival of hundreds of thousands of people in his tribe. However, that person was his only son, so he was somewhat hesitant. After all, he only had one son. Although he was not yet 30 years old, he was still in the prime of his life. Even if he lost this son, he could still have another one in the future. In any case, as long as he escaped to the Tang Empire, Li Er would give him a lot of rewards based on his status. He could still live a life of 3 wives and 4 concubines, living a life of luxury. However, who could guarantee that he would really be able to have another son in the future? The medical conditions of this era were not as developed as those of modern society. Whether it was the probability of pregnancy or the probability of a newborn being born smoothly and growing healthily, they were all not very high. In the current situation where he didn't have a second son to guarantee, Tuli didn't want to risk his only son. If Tang Jian really had a way to save his son, then Tuli was even willing to treat Tang Jian as his savior for the rest of his life, the benefactor who saved his son's life. Cough cough. Khan, you're confused because you're too concerned. Tang Jian, who felt uncomfortable being stared at by Tuli, hurriedly coughed to break the awkwardness in the air. With a serious expression, he said, Khan, you might as well think about it carefully. At this critical moment, since the barbarians and the other Tiela tribes have unanimously decided to raise their troops to fight against Xieli, not only does it show that they have long been disloyal to Xieli, but it also proves that they have already realized that this is their only chance to defeat Xieli. Khan, do you think that the Tiela tribal chiefs will give up or change their plans for such an important plan because of a hostage? Tuli's eyes turned cold when he heard this. He felt that Tang Jian's analysis was very reasonable, but some parts seemed to be somewhat unreasonable. After a moment of silence, he couldn't help but frown and ask, if that's the case, then wouldn't it be superfluous for the barbarians to send Demotzi here to sing this song? No no no. Tang Jian shook his head and said, if my guess is correct, the barbarian man's action is more of a probe. If he can successfully persuade Khan to send the hostage to Shui Yintua's tribe, it will be equivalent to him gaining a loyal ally like Khan who can advance and retreat together with him. In the future, Shui Yintua's tribe will become even more powerful among the Tai Lu tribes, even suppressing Qian tribe. Once the Tai Lu tribe's rebellion against Xieli succeeds, the barbarian man will replace Xieli and become the new master of this prairie. If you, Khan, did not agree to his request, he would not suffer any loss. The plan of Tai Li's tribes to resist Xieli could still be carried out smoothly. The only regret he had was that he could not borrow your power to achieve his goal of dominating Tai Li's tribes and even the entire prairie. But from this point of view, this person's ambition isn't small. Even if he loses this opportunity, he will sooner or later become a formidable person. The barbarian man is indeed ambitious. Tuli nodded in agreement. Soon after, he said with a worried expression, but if this Khan doesn't agree to their request, won't the barbarians fly into a rage out of humiliation and continue to attack our troops? Definitely not. Tang Jian's gaze was calm as he said with certainty, this Tang has said before that the plan of Tai Li's tribes to resist Xieli definitely did not originate from the barbarian man alone. It is also not something that the barbarian man alone can change. In terms of strength, the strength of Tai Li's 10 tribes is far inferior to Xieli. And Khan, you have more than 100,000 elite soldiers under your command. The current situation in the prairie is delicate. No matter which side wants to fight with you, they will have to knock out at least a few teeth. Therefore, if the barbarian man feels apologetic towards Khan over such a small matter and even confronts you with weapons, then in the eyes of Tai Li's 10 tribes, he is disregarding the overall situation. The other chiefs of Tai Lu tribes will definitely not allow him to act so recklessly. However, with the nature of the barbarian man, I'm afraid he will not do such a foolish thing. Later on, you can find an excuse to reject Demotzi and give the barbarian man a way out. I believe the barbarian man will not hold on to this matter and the Tai Lu army near Yiting should also disperse soon. Tuli nodded thoughtfully. Although Tang Jian's analysis was very reasonable, there was still some uneasiness in his heart. After all, this was the only chance for him and the 100,000 soldiers under his command to break out of the encirclement. For this, they could be said to have planned carefully and waited for such a result with great difficulty. If they were to be completely ruined because of his selfishness, he would not be able to feel at ease for the rest of his life. However, when he thought of his most beloved son, and thought of the current delicate situation in the prairie. In theory, the barbarian man and the rest of Tai Li's tribes would naturally not be so stupid as to waste their military strength to fight with him head-on. After hesitating and struggling in his heart for a long time, Tuli finally made up his mind. He raised his head and said with a firm gaze, "Duke Ju's discerning eyes are like torches. You saw through the barbarian man's evil scheme at a glance. This Khan admires you. Many thanks to Duke Ju for pointing out the right path for this Khan. This Khan will now find a reason to reject Demotsi." Finished speaking, Tuli solemnly cupped his fists and bowed to Tang Jian. Perhaps when Tang Jian had just arrived at the grasslands, he had indeed looked down on Tang Jian, this weak and scholarly old man. After all, at that time, the situation was like fire to him. The men under his command could be wiped out by Xieli at any time. He did not believe that a mere Tang Jian could change anything. But today, the prophecy of frost falling from the sky had come true. The people of the prairie were panic-stricken. Rumors were spreading everywhere. Tai Li's tribes took advantage of the situation to rise up and rebel against Xieli. All of this started because of Tang Jian. What was originally a dead chess game seemed to have been completely revived by Tang Jian. Even if Tuli did not say it out loud, in his heart, he gradually respected and admired Tang Jian. Today, Tang Jian even indirectly saved his son's life. Tuli believed that Tang Jian was completely worthy of this bow. You can't. You can't. Tang Jian hurriedly waved his hand and stepped aside. He smiled and said to Tuli, "Khan is too polite. When we reach the Great Tang, you and I will be colleagues in the imperial court. Why should we be so polite?" Colleagues. Hearing this, Tuli was startled. Then, he laughed and said, "Haha. Duke Ju's words are reasonable. When we leave the prairie, you and I will be colleagues. When we reach Chang'an, Shenbo Ao will definitely have a good drink with Duke Ju." Unknowingly, Tuli had changed the way he addressed Tang Jian from Ben Khan to his own name. This also showed that Tuli had regarded Tang Jian as a friend. Haha. When the time comes, we will not return until we are drunk. Tang Jian laughed and said. Tuli knew that he could not delay to mosey for too long. So, he bid farewell to Tang Jian and quickly went to the central tent. As soon as he arrived outside the tent, he heard Timothy's impatient voice coming from inside the tent, "General N.I. Sure. When will Little Khan give me an answer? My chief is still waiting for me to return and report." Soon. Soon. Such a big matter, Khan and heir apparent must have a good discussion. Why are you in such a hurry? This was N.I. Shure's voice. He was also a little impatient because before Tuli came back, he had already said similar words countless times. N.I. Shirtua was a hot-tempered person who would explode at the slightest provocation. If it were anyone else who urged him like this, he would have slapped them long ago. However, the person in front of him was Demotsi, the nephew of the barbarian man. If he beat him up, the old barbarian man would definitely not let the matter rest. At that time, it would be hard to say if they could escape from the grassland. Therefore, even though he was very unhappy, N.I. Shure had been suppressing it. His heart was very uncomfortable. No. The chief has given me 2 hours to return to the tribe and report. I can't delay any longer. I have to find Little Khan and ask him face to face whether he agrees or not. He has to give me a definite answer immediately. Inside the tent, Timothy frowned and turned to walk out of the tent. The main reason was that he was really anxious. Tuli had already left for more than a quarter of an hour. Calculating the time, the people from the other tribes should be coming soon to pass on the order of the withdrawal to the surrounding defenders. At that time, he would be exposed. Even if he was exposed, Tuli and the others wouldn't dare to do anything to him. However, if this matter spread out, the other chiefs of the Tila tribe would definitely know about the barbarian man's plan. At that time, they would really go for wool and come home shorn. N.I. Shure frowned and moved his feet slightly. In a flash, he stood in front of Timothy and said in a deep voice, "General Timothy, this is an important military camp. Not every soldier knows you. If you walk around casually, it won't be good if someone treats you as someone from another tribe and catches you. Therefore, you'd better stay in the tent and wait for Khan to come back. Before Tuli left, he told him to take good care of Tamosi. Although enrich didn't know who Tuli went to look for after leaving the tent, he could still understand the hidden meaning in Tuli's words. Tuli was determined not to let Tamosi leave the tent, at least not before Tuli came back. General enrich, what do you mean by this? Seeing that enrich had the intention to stop him, Tamosi narrowed his eyes and exuded a dangerous aura. In terms of prestige on the grasslands, although he was not as famous as enrich, when it came to fighting, he was not at all weak. Besides, he came here as a representative of the barbarian man. Naturally, there was nothing to be afraid of. Haha. General Tamosi, please don't be angry. General enrich doesn't have any bad intentions. We both hate Shili to the bone and should be friends. Why should we harm our friendship? Outside the tent, Tuli knew it was time to go in. Most importantly, in such a short time, he had already thought of an excuse to send Tamosi and the barbarian man away. Therefore, he opened the tent curtain and walked in. He chuckled at Tamosi, who was about to fight with enrich. Khan. Seeing Tuli come in, enrich was shocked. He no longer cared about Tamosi beside him and quickly turned around to salute with cupped fists. Tamosi also hurried to greet him and said, "Little Khan, you're finally back. What's the result of your discussion with Heluo?" Tamosi needs to return to the tribe as soon as possible to report. Please give me an answer now. Cough, cough. Tuli coughed softly and said with a serious face, "General Tamosi, unfortunately, Heluo has recently contracted a strange disease. His body is sometimes cold and sometimes hot." At first, this Khan thought he had caught a cold, but many shaman doctors in the tribe couldn't cure him. Just now, this Khan went to Heluo's tent to check again. Coincidentally, the tribe's old shaman doctor, Zhuama, diagnosed him. Zhuama said that Heluo has contracted a cold and fever. Chapter 2183. Khan, if the barbarian gets wind of this news, will he fly into a rage out of humiliation and lead his troops to attack us? In Tuli's tent, enrich asked Tuli worriedly after Demotsi had left for a long time. He naturally knew that what Tuli had said to Demotsi about Heluaha getting cold and fever was a lie. When he saw Heluaha yesterday, he was still alive and kicking. How could he suddenly get cold and fever? Clearly, Tuli didn't want to hand his son over to Shui Intua's tribe. From a personal point of view, enrich naturally didn't want to hand over Heluaha either. Even if the Tiela tribes withdrew, he would feel ashamed. However, compared to the lives of the hundreds of thousands of soldiers under his command, enrich felt that there was nothing wrong with leaving him behind. However, these were only his personal thoughts. Now that Tuli had made a decision, he would support him unconditionally. However, he still couldn't help but worry that the barbarian man would retaliate after he got wind of this news. The situation in the grasslands is delicate now. Since the Tiela tribes dared to unite to resist Shieli, it means that more and more tribes on the grasslands are dissatisfied with Shieli and are willing to stand up. At this time, even if the barbarian man is unwilling, he won't dare to waste his troops here. Otherwise, how can he resist Shieli? Although he wasn't sure, Tuli still replied with certainty. He had to give his subordinates confidence. Khan is wise. Enrich frowned and thought for a while. He felt that the barbarian man's words were reasonable, so he leaned over and flattered him. Tuli's expression didn't change. He pondered for a moment and ordered, "General enrich, immediately pass down the order. Tell all the generals to count their men and horses, pack up, and be ready to set out at any time. In addition, send a group of people out to pay attention to the movements of the troops around Yiting. Once the troops in one direction retreat, we will immediately break out from that direction and leave the grasslands." Enrich was shocked when he heard this. They had been trapped here for nearly half a month. They had experienced life and death situations, and even ran out of food and water. Now that they were about to break out, and I Shirtua couldn't help but feel somewhat enlightened. All these changes were brought about by that Tang. This subordinate obeys. Ni Shirtua immediately cupped his fists and accepted the order. He then turned and walked out of the tent. Duke, forgive me for speaking out of turn. We are about to complete our mission and leave the grassland to return to Chang'an. Why do you still want to create more problems? That barbarian man is not a good person. If Tuli refuses him like this, what if he changes his mind and joins the other Tiela tribes to encircle and annihilate us? I'm afraid we won't be able to go back for the rest of our lives. On the other side, in Tang Jian's tent, Yu Minghu's face turned bitter when he heard about the discussion between Tang Jian and Tuli. If it weren't for the fact that Tang Jian's status was higher than his, Yu Minghu would have smashed his fist on Tang Jian's face already. Who asked you to meddle in other people's business? Who asked you to meddle in other people's business? It's obvious that Tiela's troops are planning to withdraw. It's obvious that our mission in the prairie is about to be completed, yet you insist on instigating Tuli to play with that barbarian man. Is that barbarian man someone to be trifled with? What if the other party changed his mind in a fit of anger and joined forces with the rest of the Tiela tribe to attack Tuli's tribe? Wouldn't they all be finished? Minghu, calm down. Don't be impatient. Seeing that Yu Minghu was really anxious, Tang Jian quickly put away his smile and said with a serious face, after this incident, we can see that this barbarian man is indeed someone. But you don't have to worry. Since the Tiela tribes have decided to join forces to resist Xieli, the barbarian man won't choose to waste his troops to encircle and annihilate Tuli at this time. Besides, as far as this old man knows, the most powerful tribe among the Tiela tribes should be the Qian tribe. Even if the barbarian man loses his head in a fit of anger and wants to do something foolish, the chief of the Qian tribe won't let him do as he pleases. But what if? What if the barbarian man doesn't play by the rules and attacks Tuli with all his might in a fit of anger? Yu Minghu didn't buy it at all. Mainly, he felt that Tang Jian's action was completely superfluous. Since the barbarian man wanted Tuli to hand over He Luoya as a hostage, why not just let Tuli hand him over? What did it have to do with them? As long as the barbarian man kept his word and promised to withdraw the troops, this deal was very worthwhile. Tang Jian didn't need to interfere and instigate Tuli to reject the barbarian man. Wasn't this adding more variables to their escape from the grasslands? At this time, Yu Minghu's emotions were somewhat out of control. With reddened eyes, he said, I still have a 60-year-old father and mother at home. I was thinking that after this mission is completed, I can earn some military merits. I was planning to return to Chang'an and marry a wife to make them happy. If we can have a boy or a girl, our Yu family will have descendants and they won't have to worry about me all the time. But you did this. If the Tiela tribes really change their minds because of this, none of us can go back. Not everyone had a heart as big as Tang Jian's. For example, Yu Minghu and the other imperial guards who escorted Tang Jian to the grasslands, although they were all elites in the army, they were isolated and helpless after coming to the vast grasslands with Tang Jian. Every day, they went through life and death trials and were constantly on tenterhooks. If they were not mentally strong, they would have already broken down long ago. They were able to hold on until now because of the belief in their hearts, the belief to go home. And now, Tang Jian's seemingly superfluous decision might very well ruin their hard-won opportunity to go home. How could Yu Minghu not feel heartache? Seeing Yu Minghu reveal his true feelings, Tang Jian couldn't help but fall silent. Yu Minghu was born in the Imperial Guards. Before this, they actually didn't have any interactions. However, along the way, they had crossed mountains and rivers, experienced all kinds of difficulties and dangers, and even faced death several times. The relationship between Tang Jian and Yu Minghu and the others had gradually lost the boundary of superiority and inferiority. They were more like friends. However, before this, Yu Minghu had always obeyed Tang Jian's orders and never raised any objections. Now, his abnormal behavior was really because Tang Jian instigated Tuli to reject the barbarian man. This move was too risky. Moreover, it was risking everyone's lives. If Tang Jian had taken such a risk when they first came to the grassland, Yu Minghu wouldn't have said anything. Because at that time, their situation was very bad and they could only fight to survive. But now, they were clearly about to welcome the dawn of victory, but Tang Jian still wanted to create new problems. Yu Minghu couldn't understand this. Minghu, this old man's move is indeed a little risky, and I have neglected your feelings. This old man deeply apologizes. After a long silence, Tang Jian patted Yu Minghu's shoulder heavily and sighed. But then, he changed the topic and said, but even if I had to do it again, this old man would still make the same choice. It's not that this old man is superfluous and creating new problems. This barbarian man is very ambitious. If he really leaves Tuli's son in Shui Intua's tribe and suddenly submits to the imperial court, wouldn't it be equivalent to the barbarian man inserting a chess piece in our Tang Empire? I believe that His Majesty also doesn't want to see this situation. It's true that our Tang Empire wants to attack the grassland, but when and how to attack, only the Tang Empire has the final say. The Tang Empire can't become the barbarian man's knife to eliminate Xili. Otherwise, even if Xili falls, the barbarian man will become the next Xili. For our Tang Empire, there will be no end of trouble. Tang Jian was truly farsighted. Not only was he Li Er's subject, but he was also Li Er's close friend. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken on this dangerous mission. As a close friend, he naturally had to clear all obstacles and hidden dangers for Li Er, so he couldn't let the barbarian man take Hiluaha hostage to threaten Tuli. This was because Tuli would soon become a citizen of the Tang Empire. If the barbarian man used Hiluaha to threaten Tuli, it would be the same as threatening the Tang Empire. This was a situation that Tang Jian absolutely didn't want to see. If not for Yu Minghu's loss of composure, Tang Jian definitely wouldn't have said these words out loud. Yu Minghu couldn't help but tremble when he heard this. Although he didn't completely understand what Tang Jian said, he still roughly understood the meaning. He knew that he had misunderstood Tang Jian. Tang Jian's previous actions weren't superfluous and creating new problems, but had a deeper meaning. Duke, you have great foresight. This subordinate was short-sighted and lost composure for a moment. Please punish me, Duke. Yu Minghu knelt on one knee and cupped his fist to Tang Jian in shame. He was a soldier, and a soldier's mission was to protect the country. As long as Tang Jian's previous actions weren't aimless and were beneficial to the Tang Empire, even if it put them in danger, Yu Minghu wouldn't have any complaints because this was their mission. His previous loss of composure was mainly because he didn't understand the deeper meaning behind Tang Jian's actions. Now that he knew, he naturally wouldn't have any complaints in his heart. Get up. This isn't your fault. Tang Jian bent over and helped Yu Minghu up, then said, this old man is to blame for not considering your feelings beforehand. However, if this old man isn't wrong, even if the barbarian man knows that his plan didn't succeed, the Tiela troops near Tuli will withdraw very soon. Pass down the order and let our men prepare. Before the sky turns dark today, we should be able to leave the grassland. Seeing Tang Jian so confident, Yu Minghu couldn't help but feel relieved. He cupped his fist and said, yes. Duke. This subordinate will pass down the order now. Those bastards have been in the grassland for so long and have been waiting for this day for a long time. After saying that, Yu Minghu turned around and left the tent. In fact, the changes in the situation were much faster than Tang Jian had expected. Not long after Damoji left Tuli, about a quarter of an hour, a small group of cavalry came from the north. The leader was a man with a strong back and a bearded face. It was Kiji Heli's younger brother, Kiji Shaman. This small group of cavalry came down from the west side of Tuli and quickly arrived at a garrison camp in the south. Second leader. Second leader is here. Although Kiji Shaman wasn't very well liked by Kiji Heli, at least not as well as Guzang Jiming, but among the soldiers of Kiji tribe, Kiji Shaman's prestige was still very high. This guy was straightforward and didn't put on airs. Moreover, he was often at the forefront of battles. Such a general would naturally be supported by the soldiers. Therefore, when Kiji Shaman arrived, the soldiers in the camp who had nothing to do all gathered around and greeted him warmly. Nay. Kiji Shaman reined in his horse and skillfully dismounted. He first looked around and then asked a soldier in front of him, "Where is your General Goer?" Kiji Goer was the general of Kiji tribe and one of the most capable generals under Kiji Heli. Second leader, General Goer went to patrol the front lines. According to the time, he should be back soon. "Do you want to rest in the tent for a while?" Hearing Kiji shaman's question, the soldier quickly replied, "No need. Bring me to him." Kiji shaman shook his head and prepared to get back on his horse. At this moment, the sound of horse hooves came from the north of the camp. Then, a soldier in the camp shouted, "General Goer is back." Kiji shaman was stunned when he heard this. Then, he grinned and laughed, "Ha! Looks like I came at the right time." Then, he strode towards the group of people. "Second leader, why are you here?" Chibi Gu Er was a tall and skinny middle-aged man with a thick beard. When he saw Chibi Sha men approaching, he hurriedly went forward and bowed respectfully. "Ha! Goer. We brothers don't need to be so polite." Kiji shaman laughed and put a hand on Kiji Goer's shoulder. Then, he said, "Goer, I'm here to pass on my big brother's orders." Kiji Goer was stunned. He motioned for the soldiers on his left and right to withdraw. Then, he quickly asked, "What orders does the chief have?" Kiji shaman said, "My big brother orders you to immediately gather all the men here and withdraw to the tribe. No delay." "What? Withdraw all the men? But if the great Khan knows?" Hearing this, Chita Gu was greatly shocked. He knew that a few days ago, Shili had given the tribal chiefs of Tiela a death order. If they withdrew their troops, how could Shili spare Chita Gu or tribe? Kiji shaman smiled mysteriously and whispered to Kiji Goer, "Big brother wants you to withdraw the men to get rid of Shili. Don't worry, the other tribes have already agreed that they will withdraw their troops today. While Shili hasn't reacted yet, we have to withdraw all the men." "What?" Kiji Goer's eyes widened when he heard this. His heart could not help but tremble violently. At this moment, he only had one thought in his mind: the sky has changed, the sky of the grassland is about to change. All right. This subordinate will gather the soldiers and withdraw to the tribe. After being shocked for a while, Kiji Goer finally came back to his senses. He took a deep breath and cupped his fists at Kiji shaman. Fighting against the powerful Shili, although the outcome was hard to predict, but since this was Kiji Heli's decision, he could only support it. Moreover, all the herders and soldiers of the Tiela tribes did not have a good impression of Shili. Now that he could fight Shili openly, not only did Kiji Goer not have the slightest fear, he even had a trace of excitement. Chapter 2184. Quick! Quick! Everyone must rush back to the tribe before noon. Those behind, hurry up. When it was close to noon, the unavoidable Qigong clan army of Tuli suddenly began to move. A large number of people circled to the west side of Tuli Kingdom, then under the lead of Qigong shaman and Qigong Gu, the army rushed north, stirring up dust and grass along the way. When the army reached the foot of Mount Udeti, which was more than 10 miles away from the west side of the Tuli tribe, a large group of cavalry suddenly appeared in front of them, and the cavalry was rushing in their direction. Shoo! Seeing this scene, Kiger hurriedly reined in his warhorse, and at the same time raised his hand towards the rear troops, indicating for them to stop. Kiger's shaman frowned, and said with a displeased expression, "Could it be Shili's men?" This question was naturally directed at Chi and Gu. The two of them were standing in a row. Chi and Gu looked into the distance for a while. When the cavalry was only 1 mile away from them, his expression suddenly changed and he said with a serious expression, "Not good. It's Shi Er's army. He went to inspect the Heshi tribe earlier. I didn't expect him to come back so soon." Previously, when the grassland was filled with rumors because of the prophecy of frost, Shili specially gave the Tiela 10 tribes such as Qian tribe and Shui Yintua tribe a death order to prevent any changes in the great cause of unifying the grassland. He ordered them to annihilate the Tuli tribe and trample the Tuli tribe within 2 days. Moreover, to prevent the Tiela 10 tribes from going against him and not going all out, Shili also sent General Ashina Shi Er to lead 10,000 elite wolf riders to supervise the battle at the front line. Once he found that someone was passive and slacking, Ashina Shi could even directly kill first and report later. The cavalry that was charging towards Chigar was none other than Ashina Shirchu's army of warlords. Its members were all from the grassland's most elite cavalry, the Wolf Riders. Hearing this, Chien Heli's expression changed and he couldn't help but ask, "What should we do now? Why don't the rear army become the front army and bypass them from other places?" It was true that he was very confident in his own strength, but he didn't have much confidence in the soldiers under him. To be precise, he didn't have much confidence in the warriors of the Chien tribe when facing the elite Wolf Riders. No. The Wolf Riders were too fast, we couldn't get around them in time. Moreover, once they catch up to us, our formation will be too chaotic, and it will be very difficult to resist their attacks. Kishiger was much more experienced in battle formations. Hearing this, he shook his head and rejected Kishiger's suggestion. Then, his mind turned quickly. A moment later, he turned to Kishiger and said, "Second leader, please take a detour with you and search for the nearby Gogu tribe, Tong Luo tribe, and Huihe tribe. They definitely haven't completely retreated. Since the Tiela 10 tribes have already decided to join hands to fight against Xieli, now that we have encountered the wolf cavalry, there is no reason for them to sit idly by." Xier only brought 10,000 wolf riders. As long as Pugu tribe, Tong Luo tribe, and Hueha tribe are willing to send reinforcements, Xier's 10,000 wolf riders will definitely not dare to act blindly without thinking. They will only retreat in the face of difficulties. Asking for reinforcements was the only feasible method that Tashiger could think of at the moment. There was no other way, the strength of the wolf cavalry was simply too strong. Moreover, the leader of the wolf cavalry was the famous great general Ashina Shirchu of the grasslands. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. Against this wolf cavalry, Tashiger did not have absolute confidence in victory. But hearing this, Kishiger hesitated. Speaking of which, if he went to ask for reinforcements, what about Tashiger and the others? Could they withstand the attack of 10,000 elite wolf riders? Putting aside their positions, Kishiger and Kishiger's personal relationship was rather good. Normally, they called each other brothers, which was why Kishiger hesitated at this moment. "Second leader, don't worry. Xier only brought 10,000 wolf riders. My tribe has 80,000 men. Although it will be somewhat difficult for us to completely defeat these 10,000 wolf riders, it is also impossible for them to completely defeat us in a short period of time. We will definitely be able to hold on until second leader returns with reinforcements." Kishiger knew what Kishiger was worried about, so he hurriedly spoke to dispel the latter's doubts. "Good. Gu-er, you must hold on until I return with reinforcements." Kishiger knew that time was of the essence, so he did not waste any more words. He stepped forward and patted Gu-er's shoulder heavily, then turned around without hesitation. He picked a small group of men and horses, and then rushed madly towards the rear of the army. "Shoo! General Gu-er." Not long after Qigong Shaman left with his men, Ashina Shi-er and his wolf riders arrived in front of Qigong Gu-er. Seeing the dense horde of cavalry behind Gu-er, Ashina Shi-er frowned and asked, "What are you doing here instead of clearing out the rebels in the south of Tuli?" As he spoke, Ashina Shirchu stared into Katanger's eyes and asked word by word, "Could it be that you want to disobey the Great Khan's orders and rebel?" Kishiger looked at Ashina Shi-er, then calmly cupped his fists and replied, "Shi-er Top Shi must be joking. The Kishiger tribe will always be loyal to the Great Khan. How could we rebel?" Gu-er only returned to the Kishiger tribe after receiving the tribal chief's order to change the defense. "Once we return to the Kishiger tribe, it won't be long before a new force comes to surround Tuli." Ashina Shi-er glanced at the army behind Kishiger and couldn't help but frown. It was clear that Kishiger was lying. There were at least 60 to 70,000 soldiers, and this wasn't a normal change of defense. Kishiger had very likely withdrawn all of the Kishiger tribe's soldiers stationed in the south of Tuli. It seemed that the Kishiger tribe really couldn't hold back and wanted to rebel. Ashina Shirchi thought to himself. What a change of defense. General Gu-er has withdrawn all of the Kishiger tribe's soldiers stationed in the south of Tuli. Are you not worried that the remnants of Tuli will take this opportunity to break out of your southern defense line and flee to the Great Tang? Ashina Shi'er coldly snorted and said. At the same time, his right hand was already on the hilt of the scimitar at his waist. The aura of a martial arts expert instantly rose. Ashina Shirchu understood in his heart that the Qian tribe was most likely already preparing to rebel, and as Shili's right-hand general, he naturally had to nip these rebel forces in the bud at the very beginning. He wanted to make sure that the main force of the Qishijur tribe was left behind. Even if the opponent's numbers were several times his own, Ashina Shi'er was not afraid at all. This was because the army under his command was the elite wolf cavalry that Shili had carefully cultivated, and each one of them could fight against 10. This is a matter of my Qishijur tribe. There's no need for you to say anything. If Tuli really does take this opportunity to escape, my tribal chief will think of a way to give the Great Khan an explanation. Seeing Ashina Shi'er's expression suddenly change in his hand on the hilt of his scimitar, Qishijur knew that today's matter could not be settled peacefully, so he no longer spoke kindly to Ashina Shi'er. No need. Taking you all down is the best explanation the Qishijur tribe can give to the Great Khan. Ashina Shi'er coldly snorted, and suddenly shouted to the soldiers behind him, listen to my order. Qishijur has disregarded the Great Khan's military order and hastily withdrew his army. Take him down. Kill. The 10,000 wolf cavalry behind Ashina Shi'er suddenly burst into a battle cry. Their cries were like thunder, and their momentum was like a rainbow. Facing an enemy that was several times their number, these wolf cavalry did not have the slightest trace of fear on their faces. This was a true elite army. On the other hand, when the Qishijur tribe's army heard the battle cry of these 10,000 wolf cavalry, many people's faces had already changed slightly. It was not that they were cowards, but the wolf cavalry's reputation in the grasslands was really too great. These years, the wolf cavalry under Shili's command on the grasslands, and even in the Central Plains, had established illustrious military exploits, and no army dared to compete with them. How dare you? Shi'er, are you trying to stir up a dispute between the Qishijur tribe and the Great Khan? Listen to my order, take Shi'er down. Qishijur knew that this battle was unavoidable, so he shouted to the soldiers behind him. He was not afraid of fighting with the wolf cavalry. Just like what he said to Qishijur Gate earlier, it was very difficult for him and the 80,000 warriors of the Qishijur tribe to defeat Ashina Shi'er's 10,000 elite wolf cavalry, but it was also not easy for Ashina Shi'er's 10,000 elite wolf cavalry to defeat them. At least, it was almost impossible in a short period of time. What he needed to do was to stall for time and wait for the reinforcements called by Qishijur Gate. Kill. The two sides soon clashed. The moment the two armies came into contact, the wolf cavalry exploded with a terrifying impact and lethality. They actually tore a hole in the middle of the Qishijur tribe's army. Ashina Shi'er wanted to tear the 80,000 Qishijur tribe's army in half, and then divide and destroy them. But after all, the Qishijur tribe had the absolute advantage in terms of numbers. After the initial panic, the Qishijur tribe's soldiers became braver and braver as they fought. Soon, the gap was filled, and the battle gradually entered a stalemate. Reporting. On the other side, in Tuli's Yiting, a sergeant quickly ran into the main tent. He bowed to Tuli inside the tent and reporting to Khan, the Chiga tribe's garrison troops to the south of Yiting have suddenly retreated to the west. What? Because he had refused the barbarian man's hostage request, Tuli's heart was in a mess. When he heard the barbarian man's words, his eyes widened. Immediately, his face was filled with deep pleasant surprise. With a whoa, he stood up and quickly walked over to the sergeant. He asked, "Are you saying that the Chilean tribe's army in the south has withdrawn?" The soldier probably did not expect Tuli to be so excited. He could not help but take a step back and said, "Yes. Great Khan. The Qishijur tribe has retreated to the west." Chapter 2185. The atmosphere of the troops heading south was very relaxed, especially when they saw that the camp of the Qian tribe south of Yiting was indeed empty. Everyone cheered because the dark cloud of death that had been hanging over their heads for half a month had finally dissipated. Therefore, some people were so excited that tears streamed down their cheeks, while others couldn't help but hum. It was very lively. Tuli rode in front of everyone. Seeing this scene, he didn't speak harshly because he knew that his subordinates had been suppressed for too long. Reporting. Right at this moment, a sergeant riding a fast horse rushed out from the right rear of the troops. He arrived in front of Tuli, dismounted from his horse, cupped his fists and reporting to Khan, the troops of Qian tribe have encountered Ashina Sheik's wolf cavalry near Mount Wuda. Both sides are currently engaged in battle. It is difficult to determine the outcome of the battle. This sergeant was a scout that Tuli had sent out earlier. Although he knew that the Qian tribe's troops had retreated, Tuli didn't let down his guard. After all, not only were their troops brave and good at fighting, but they also had some old, weak, and injured soldiers. Their marching speed wouldn't be too fast. If they were to unfortunately run into Xieli's troops on their way south, then they really wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore, when they were retreating south, Tuli sent out a group of scouts to scout for information and investigate the enemy's situation. The Qian tribe encountered Ashina Shirkun's wolf cavalry. And it's near Mount Yudeti? Tuli's expression abruptly changed when he heard this. Their current location was only a dozen or so li away from Mount Wudu. For the extremely mobile wolf cavalry, this distance was actually nothing. If the other party knew their exact location, it would definitely be very easy for them to catch up to them. Therefore, Tuli was subconsciously worried when he heard this news. Khan, don't worry. At this time, enrich rolled his eyes and said to Tuli, as far as I know, Ashina Shirkun only has about 10,000 wolf riders under his command, while the Qian tribe has about 80,000 soldiers. Although the wolf riders' combat strength is unparalleled in the world, the Qian tribe's strength cannot be underestimated either. It is almost impossible for Ashina Shirkun's 10,000 wolf riders to easily defeat the Qian tribe's 80,000 soldiers, let alone catch up to us. After listening to enrich's analysis, Tuli felt a little relieved. But soon after, he said with some worry, but in this way, the Qian tribe is bound to suffer heavy losses. I'm afraid the Tiela 10 tribe's plan to unite against the Meng Chu will come to an end. Although Qian tribe used to be a tribe under Xieli, Tuli still admired Qian Heli quite a bit. So much so that before he had a falling out with Xieli, Tuli and Qian Heli had a very good personal relationship. Because their personalities and political views were similar, they could be considered half-bosom friends. Now that the Qian tribe's 80,000 warriors were up against Ashina Shik's 10,000 elite wolf riders, it was very likely that the Qian tribe's vitality would be greatly damaged. Tuli couldn't help but sigh with regret. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't even protect himself now, he might still send some troops to help the Qian tribe. But Tuli turned around and looked at the exhausted officers and soldiers behind him. He couldn't help but shake his head. In the current situation, he obviously didn't have the spare energy to care about the Qian tribe. Little Khan, you worry too much. At this time, Tang Jian, who was standing beside Tuli, opened his mouth and said, since the Tiela 10 tribes have decided to unite against Xieli, now that the Qian tribe has encountered Xieli's wolf riders, the other Tiela 10 tribes naturally won't sit idly by. As long as the Qian tribe's generals aren't stupid, they will certainly send someone to send a message to the other Tiela tribe's armies that had previously surrounded us. When the time comes, these 10,000 wolf riders will most likely become the Tiela tribe's first sacrifice to Xieli. Our top priority now is to go south as soon as possible and escape from the control of Xieli's army. Because even if the Tiela 10 tribes can annihilate Ashina Shir's 10,000 wolf riders, the news of the Tiela 10 tribe's betrayal and letting us go will quickly reach Xieli's ears. We must take advantage of this time to escape as far as possible. What Duke Ju said makes sense. Tuli nodded his head upon hearing that. Then, he instructed General enrich, pass down the order. The entire army must speed up. Before nightfall, we must leave the grassland. Enrich's brows slightly creased. He thought for a moment and said, Khan, if we march at a normal speed, it won't be a problem to leave the grassland before nightfall. But we have a large number of people accompanying us. Moreover, there are many old, weak, and injured soldiers in the troop. This will certainly affect the marching speed. Therefore, this subordinate suggests that we divide the troops into two groups. One group will escort Khan to leave the grassland at the fastest speed possible, while the other group will escort the old, weak, and injured soldiers and chase after us with all our might. This place is no more than 100 li away from Shako Mountain. Once we pass Shako Mountain, we will arrive at the Great Tang's territory. Even if Shili's troops have more guts, they won't dare to pursue us any further. Our two groups will converge there. Hearing that, Tuli was slightly moved. But after thinking for a moment, he shook his head and said, "No." When this Khan was trapped in a tight encirclement, all the officers and soldiers did not leave and did not abandon me. They fought alongside this Khan, bathed in blood. Now that there is hope to escape from the grassland, how can this Khan abandon my own people? Tuli was a person who cherished old friendships and attached great importance to relationships. Otherwise, he would not have gathered around him a group of troops who were loyal and devoted to him and would never abandon him. Even under the desperate situation of being heavily encircled by Shili's 300,000-strong army, not a single tribe or even a single troop betrayed him. This point had a lot to do with the way Tuli usually treated people and handled affairs. Of course, a large part of the reason was that most of the tribes loyal to Tuli were the old subordinates of the previous generation Turkic Khan, Shibi Khan. As Shibi Khan's son, Tuli himself had quite a bit of Shibi Khan's style. Therefore, he was able to gather a group of loyal and devoted subordinates around him. Although Ni Shirtua's proposal was very tempting to Tuli, he knew that if he really took his people and left just like that, the remaining old, weak, and injured soldiers would certainly have some ideas. His subordinates would also have some criticism toward him. He must refuse, at least on the surface. Sure enough, as soon as Tuli's voice fell, the eyes of the officers and soldiers behind him, especially those who were wounded and lying on the handcarts, instantly turned red. One after another, they opened their mouths and said, "Khan, please leave first. We will meet up with you later. Khan, please leave first. We are willing to cover the rear for Khan. Khan, please leave first. Don't worry about us. We'll definitely meet up with you." The subordinates behind Tuli were all moved by Tuli's words. Regardless of whether Tuli's words were sincere or not, it was rare and commendable for Tuli to say such words at such a crucial time. Khan, actually, General Ni Shirtua's words are not without reason. Right at this moment, Tang Jian opened his mouth because he knew that if he didn't speak, it would be difficult for Tuli to step down. With a serious expression, he said, "Moreover, if we split up and hurry on our way, it doesn't mean that we will abandon the old, weak, and injured soldiers in the tribe. With so many of us traveling together, we will be too big of a target. If we split up into several groups, we will have a higher chance of successfully escaping the prairie. In addition, if Khan leads a group of elites to escape the prairie as quickly as possible, we can also ask for help from the Great Tang's border army. Then, we can lead the border army to the periphery of the prairie to meet up with the remaining tribes. In this way, isn't it killing two birds with one stone? Right now, time is of the essence. Khan, please make a decision as soon as possible." Actually, it wasn't important to Tang Jian whether or not he could bring all of Tuli's tribes out of the prairie. This was because he had already achieved his goal of sneaking into the prairie. The prairie was in chaos. The Tiela 10 tribes had begun to unite with other tribes to resist Shili. Tuli was also about to be rescued by him and brought back to the Great Tang. As for whether or not the old, weak, and injured soldiers in Tuli's tribe could escape the prairie, it was no longer important. Right now, what was more important to him was to bring Tuli back to the Great Tang. Khan, Duke Ju is right. If we split up, it will be more advantageous for us to break out. Right now, time is of the essence. Please make a decision as soon as possible." Ni Shirtua glanced at Tang Jian gratefully and hurriedly echoed. Speaking of which, ever since he met Tang Jian, this was the first time he found Tang Jian pleasing to the eye. "Khan, please leave first. We will catch up with you later." This subordinate is willing to stay behind to escort the old, weak, and injured soldiers of the tribe. Khan, please feel free to leave first. Several of the generals behind Tuli began to persuade him. Very well. Since that's the case, General and I Shirtua, select a group of light cavalry and follow this Khan to Shako Mountain. Then, ask the Great Tang border army to come and receive our troops. Tuli had a helpless look on his face. After pondering for a moment, he could only nod and agree. Then, he said to the generals behind him, you must escort the remaining troops out of the prairie safely. After this Khan sees the Great Tang border army, he will come with them to receive you. This subordinate obeys. Khan, please be careful on the way. The generals naturally cupped their fists and accepted the order. Not long after, this massive group quickly split into two groups. One group of 10,000 light cavalry abandoned all of their heavy equipment and rations, breaking away from the main group. They began to gallop as fast as they could across the vast and boundless plains, heading for the border of the grasslands to the south. As for the original main group, the remaining people were divided into 10 small groups under the arrangement of several generals. These 10 small groups were divided into 10 different routes. Although the direction of their advance was roughly south, they did not take the same route. The 10 groups quickly separated and gradually lost sight of each other. In this way, even if Xieli's men caught up with one of their groups, the remaining 9 groups would have a great chance of survival. This was to share the risk. At the foot of Yudagi Mountain, Ashina Shi'er's 10,000 wolf cavalry and the 80,000 troops of the Qian tribe were fighting in a chaotic battle. Both sides fought with their lives on the line whenever they saw each other. In just a short while, both sides had already lost a lot of men. Of course, compared to the wolf cavalry, the Qian tribe had more casualties. Just the first few charges of the wolf cavalry had already caused the Qian tribe to have several thousand casualties. Both sides fought fiercely until now. The casualties of the Qian tribe had already increased to more than 20,000 people. On the other hand, Ashina Shi'er's side had at most 2,000 casualties. It was almost a 1-to-10 casualty ratio. The terrifying battle strength of the wolf cavalry could be seen at a glance. On the Qian tribe's side, there were even signs of defeat. When some of the soldiers encountered the wolf cavalry, they had already lost their will to fight. They only cared about running for their lives and did not even think about taking up their weapons to resist. Seeing this scene, Ashina Shi'er's mouth could not help but curl into a cold smile. He thought to himself that although the Qian tribe had many men, they were just a bunch of mobs. The difference between them and his wolf cavalry was too great. Qian Gu was secretly anxious at this moment. Because he knew that once his men showed signs of defeat, the casualty ratio of both sides would very likely not be 1-to-10, but 1-to-20, or even 1-to-30. This was the reason why a defeated army was like a landslide. All soldiers listened to my order. Only advance, no retreat. Follow me and kill our way out. Our reinforcements will be here soon. Qian Gu knew that he could not continue like this. He had to raise the morale of his men. Otherwise, the 80,000 soldiers of the Qian tribe would very likely all die here. Thus, he leaped up and chopped down a wolf cavalry general. Then, he flipped himself back onto his horse and shouted to the surrounding Qian soldiers. Sure enough, when they heard Qian Gu say that reinforcements would be here soon, the morale of the Qian soldiers instantly rose. Furthermore, when they saw the valiant Qian Gu taking the lead and chopping down several wolf cavalry, the soldiers all roared and once again charged towards the wolf cavalry. Reinforcements? Ashina Shi'er frowned when he heard this. This place was still tens of miles away from the headquarters of the Qian tribe. Not to mention whether the Qian tribe knew about this, even if they did, the reinforcements they sent would not be able to arrive so quickly. Did Qian Gu say this to boost the morale of the troops, or did they really have reinforcements? Just when Ashina Shi'er was bewildered, on the grassland to the east of Wuda Mountain, an army of tens of thousands suddenly appeared. It was a black mass that covered the sky and covered the earth. Tuache, there is a large group of cavalry 5 li to the east. They are coming towards us. A wolf cavalry rider quickly arrived in front of Ashina Shi'er and hurriedly reported. Ashina Sheikh Chu also noticed the movement in the east. When he heard what was said, he quickly turned his head to look. He saw a black mass of cavalry about 4 to 5 li to the east, rushing towards them. Ashina Sheikh Chu was shocked at first, then he became furious. This is the Hueha tribe's troops stationed in the east of Tuli's remaining troops. Damn it. Now it seems that the 10 Tiela tribes have decided to secretly rebel. We must send this news back to the palace as soon as possible. Retreat immediately. Almost in an instant, Ashina Sheikh guessed the general situation and made a decision. In this situation, the 10,000 wolf cavalry under his command were obviously not enough. If they continued to fight with the Qian tribe, once they were surrounded by Tiela tribe, his men would probably all die here. Brothers, the wolf cavalry has retreated. Our reinforcements are here. Don't let them go. Let's kill them and avenge our dead brothers. Seeing that Ashina Sheikh wolf cavalry was retreating and that reinforcements were coming from the east, Qian Gu decided to beat them while they were down. The main reason was that he knew that in the future, the Qian tribe would have to face Xieli's wolf cavalry. If he could take the opportunity to kill a few more wolf cavalry today, it would not be a loss. Chapter 2186. Reporting to the Great Khan, news has just come from the dark section. The Tiela 10 tribes have decided to rebel and ordered the withdrawal of the 300,000 troops surrounding Tuli's remaining forces. Tuli will definitely use this opportunity to escape the grasslands and seek refuge with the Great Tang. Grasslands, Royal Court. The Vice Commander of the Wolf Guard, Wang Yudong. Oh, no, Wang Yudong should be considered the official commander of the Wolf Guard now. He quickly walked into the tent and bowed slightly towards Xieli, who was seated at the head of the table. Ever since the moment Xieli gave up on rescuing Zhao Dian, who was trapped in Taiyuan, Wang Yudong had become the true boss of the Wolf Guards. Although Xieli kept saying that he was only letting Wang Yudong temporarily assume the position of Guard Master of the Wolf Guards, and that he would return the position of Guard Master to Zhao Dian after rescuing him, anyone with a discerning eye knew that Zhao Dian would probably never return. Because the situation of the grasslands was about to become chaotic, Xieli did not have any extra troops to go rescue Zhao Dian. What? The Tiela 10 tribes have already rebelled and withdrawn all their troops. Hearing this, Xieli's right hand holding the teacup shook violently. The tea in the teacup was the extremely rare divine tea from the Great Tang, which Xieli's subordinates had plundered with great difficulty. At this moment, Xieli's hand shook and a lot of tea spilled out of the teacup. If it were in the past, Xieli would definitely feel some heartache, but at this moment, Xieli no longer had the mind to care about this. He put down the teacup and stood up with an ugly expression. I didn't expect these people to act so quickly. It must be that bastard Nan. This morning, he gathered the chiefs of the Tiela tribes for a meeting in the Shui Intua tribe. He must have wanted to unite the Tiela tribes to rebel against this Khan. But this Khan didn't expect these people to all agree to unite with Nan and act so quickly. Wang Yudong said with a worried expression, Khan, what should we do now? The Tiela 10 tribes have millions of troops. If they unite, I'm afraid. At this point, Wang Yudong tactfully did not continue, but the meaning he wanted to express could be understood by anyone. But Xieli smiled coldly and said with a face full of disdain, They're just a few restless grasshoppers. If they want to jump, they'll have to ask this Khan for permission. A mere Tiela 10 tribes? This Khan has never put them in his eyes. Hearing this, Wang Yudong's worried face gradually relaxed. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked tentatively, then tonight's banquet, in the morning, when he found out that Nan had secretly gathered all the Tiela tribe leaders to discuss matters in Shui Intua tribe, Xieli had ordered people to send a letter to all the Tiela tribe leaders, saying that there would be a banquet in the royal court tonight, inviting all the tribe leaders, but now. He had originally planned to use tonight's banquet as an example to others, but he had not expected these people to act so quickly. With the current situation, even if this Khan invites them, they won't have the guts to attend the banquet. Xieli shook his head. Suddenly, his gaze focused as he looked at Wang Yudong and said in a deep voice, since those ants don't know life from death and want to take advantage of the situation to cause trouble, then this Khan will let them know what is called a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He immediately ordered the Dark Tribe to cooperate with the Light Tribe experts and execute the decapitation plan in advance. It's tonight. Hearing this, Wang Yudong's eyes widened in shock. The decapitation plan, mentioned by Xieli, as the deputy leader of the Wolf Guards, he had naturally heard of it and was deeply involved in it. It was precisely because he was one of the main executors of this plan that Wang Yudong was so shocked when he heard that Xieli was going to start this plan now. After coming back to his senses, Wang Yudong advised, "Khan, please reconsider. Now that rumors are spreading all over the grassland and the situation is delicate, if we forcefully start the decapitation plan, I'm afraid it will lead to a strong backlash from the other tribes and turn to imitate or rely on the Tiela tribe to resist us. In addition, although there are Dark Tribe members of the Wolf Guards hidden in all the Tiela tribes, most of them have not really come into contact with the core power of each tribe. If we start the decapitation plan in advance, I'm afraid it will be difficult to completely succeed. Once there is a flaw, our previous deployment will be for naught. Even if we can't completely succeed, at least we can make most of their tribes leaderless. This Khan wants to let them know that on this grassland, I, Ashina, still have the final say. Whoever dares to resist, there is only one outcome, and that is death." Wang Yudong's words did not make Xieli give up on executing the decapitation plan. Xieli's tiger-like eyes focused as he snorted coldly and persisted. Wang Yudong was silent upon hearing this. Seeing this, Xieli slowed down and continued, "The 10 tribes of the Tiela tribe have millions of soldiers. If we allow them to unite, it will bring a lot of trouble to this Khan. Although this Khan does not fear them in a head-on battle, to eliminate this group of ants, this Khan will inevitably consume a portion of the power in my hands. This Khan's true goal is to enter the Central Plains and not just this grassland before our eyes. Therefore, there is no difficulty in quelling this rebellion. What's difficult is that we need to eliminate this group of ants at the smallest cost. Taking advantage of the fact that they have yet to unite, we will kill a few of their leaders and let a few of their tribes fall into chaos first. Then, this Khan will gather the elite forces and swiftly annihilate these few tribes with a thunderous momentum. As for the remaining tribes, it will be much easier to deal with them." Wang Yudong's heart trembled. He did not expect that even in this kind of situation, Xieli would still want to attack the Central Plains. Moreover, facing the rebellion of the 10 tribes of the Tiela tribe before them, Xieli clearly planned to use a swift and decisive method to quell the rebellion. This required a lot of courage, but at the same time, this was also the most suitable method to break the current situation. Thinking of this, Wang Yudong bowed and cupped his hands, saying, "Khan is wise. This subordinate will arrange it right away. Tonight, the Wolf Guards will execute the decapitation plan in the 10 tribes of the Tiela tribe. Go." Xieli nodded and said, "Once the decapitation plan succeeds, this Khan's army will attack the various tribes of the Tiela tribe overnight. This Khan has always had high hopes for the Wolf Guards. Don't let this Khan down." The Wolf Guards had not been established for a long time in the Turks, but the speed of their rise and development was extremely fast. Back then, with Xieli's full support, Zhao Dian established the Wolf Guards and recruited a large number of martial arts experts and personnel who were good at collecting intelligence. Not only did they quickly help Xieli eliminate the voices of opposition on the grassland, they even infiltrated the dark operations of the Wolf Guards into various factions. This included not only the various tribes of the grassland, but also the Great Tang. Some of these dark operations members could only be peripheral members of certain factions, but some had already completely infiltrated the enemy's inner circle, even becoming the core members of the opposing faction. Of course, the reason why the Wolf Guards could develop so quickly, apart from Zhao Dian's own outstanding ability, was also inseparable from Xieli's full support. Rest assured, Khan. The Wolf Guards will definitely not disappoint Khan's high hopes. Wang Yudong's expression turned cold as he cupped his hands very solemnly towards Xieli. Seeing that Xieli had no other orders, Wang Yudong turned and left. Although the success of the decapitation plan seemed difficult, the Wolf Guards had been planning for a long time, and the various Tiela tribes were completely unprepared for it. Thus, overall, the chances of the success of the decapitation plan were very high. Wang Yudong was somewhat confident. But in order to be absolutely safe, he still had to make some preparations before the plan could begin. Fortunately, there was still a long time until nightfall. Come. Have General Silly come over. After Wang Yudong left, within the tent, Shili instructed the guard outside in a deep voice. Yes. The guard obeyed and left. Why hasn't Sandgate returned yet? Did he run into some accident on the way? At the same time, in the main tent of the Chiguan tribe, Chiguan Heli was anxiously pacing back and forth with his hands behind his back. After a few moments, he stood still and muttered with a frown. Inside the tent, apart from Chiguan Heli, there was another person, and that was the #1 strategist under his command, Guzang Jiming. Hearing this, Guzang Jiming pondered for a moment and said, "The matter of the 10 Tiela tribes joining forces to resist Shili is extremely confidential. At present, there should be no possibility of the news leaking out." The various tribes acted quickly according to the plan. Logically speaking, Shili shouldn't have had time to react. No, there's another variable. Speaking up to here, Guzang Jiming seemed to have thought of something and his expression suddenly changed. Chiguan Heli's heart also thumped. He looked at Guzang Jiming and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "What variable?" Guzang Jiming replied, "Shi'er's wolf cavalry. The 10,000 wolf cavalry that Shili sent to supervise the battle. If the second leader and the others encountered this troop on the way back, I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble." Shi'er's wolf cavalry. Chiguan Heli was stunned at first, and then his expression changed. Obviously, when he sent Chiguan Shaman to pass the order to Chiguan Gu'er, he didn't consider this layer. The main reason was that too many things had happened in the past 2 days. In addition, Ashina Shi'er only had 10,000 wolf cavalry under his command, and there were more than 300,000 wolf cavalry surrounding the remnants of Tuli's troops. 10,000 supervising troops were 300,000, so much so that Chiguan Heli had almost forgotten about this troop. Now that he heard Guzang Jiming mention it, his heart sank. Gu'er has 80,000 elites of my Chiguan tribe under his command. If they encounter Shi'er's 10,000 wolf cavalry, they will be able to protect themselves. However, if the two sides really fight to the death regardless of the cost, I'm afraid my tribe will suffer heavy losses. Jiming, you. Chiguan Heli was about to let Guzang Jiming lead a group of people to rescue Chiguan Shaman and Chiguan Gu'er. At this moment, a soldier outside the tent shouted, reporting to the chief, "The scouts at the front have reported that General Gu'er's troops have encountered Shi'er's 10,000 elite wolf cavalry at the foot of Mount Udeti. Both sides are fighting fiercely." What? Chiguan Heli's expression changed greatly. Previously, those were only their guesses. However, now that their guesses were true, the 80,000 elites of Chiguan tribe were already fighting with Ashina Shi'er's 10,000 wolf cavalry. If he were to send an army to rescue them now, it would probably be too late. After all, Chiguan tribe was almost 100 li away from Mount Udeti. Scout again, report again. After weighing the pros and cons in his mind for a moment, Chiguan Heli ordered the messenger soldier outside the tent. At this moment, it was obviously too late to send an army to rescue them. The only thing he could do was to wait for news. Yes. The messenger soldier accepted the order and left. In the tent, Chiguan Heli's face was gloomy and he was at his wit's end. Guzang Jiming thought for a moment and comforted him, "Chief, you don't have to be too worried. Although Gu'er's tribe encountered the wolf cavalry, the number of wolf cavalry under Shi'er's command is no more than 10,000. Our tribe has 80,000 elites. Even if the wolf cavalry's battle prowess is unparalleled, if they want to fight 80,000 with 10,000, I'm afraid it will be difficult to win. Moreover, at this moment, the other Tiela tribes are also retreating. When they hear the commotion at the foot of Mount Udeti, they will definitely not stand by and do nothing. They will definitely come to help. Therefore, these 10,000 wolf cavalry are not enough." Sigh. Chiguan Heli sighed and said, "How could I not know this? I have also never worried that Gu'er's tribe would lose to Shi'er's 10,000 wolf cavalry. What I am worried about is that even if Gu and the others win, I'm afraid they will suffer heavy losses. Next, the 10 tribes of Tiela will join forces to resist Xieli. Nan is also very ambitious. If our tribe's strength is seriously damaged, I'm afraid we will be in danger. Now, we can only hope that the other tribes can quickly discover the battle at the foot of Mount Udeti and go to help. Guzang Jiming's heart sank. Because Chiguan Heli's worries were not without reason. According to the plan, the 10 tribes of Tiela will join forces to resist Xieli. At this time, if the Chiguan tribes suffered heavy losses because of this small conflict, then in the following uprising, not only would they have to face the threat from Xieli, they would also have to face their allies. For example, Inan. Seeing that the Chiguan tribe was weak, it was very hard to guarantee that Inan would not wait for an opportunity to annex the Chiguan tribe. After all, this guy's ambition was known by everyone. No matter what, since Shi-Er's wolf cavalry has already encountered our people, then the news of the 10 tribes of Tiela joining forces will definitely reach Xieli's ears very soon. According to the plan, the Chiguan tribe and Shui-Yintua tribe will establish 2 lines of defense in the north and south, guarding and helping each other. The most important thing now is that we have to gather the other 4 tribes near the south to the Chiguan tribe as soon as possible. This way, we will have the strength to fight against Xieli's thunderous fury. Chapter 2187. Aren't these monks from the Puguang Monastery? Why have they come all the way here? So many monks. Are they going to hold a Dharma assembly? If we go any further, we'll reach Jian Square. That place hasn't been very peaceful in the last few days. At the 3rd quarter of the afternoon, a group of monks wearing yellow monk robes appeared on the street to the northwest of Taiyuan City's Shuoran Square. This group of monks was heading west, and a carriage was in the middle of them. As the wind blew through the window curtains, one could vaguely make out a dignified middle-aged monk seated within the carriage, his hands clasped together. The common folk on the street couldn't help but begin to discuss this procession. Shuoran Square was located in a very strange location. Kang Chang'an and Zhu Shiqing had been pursued by the government and the Wang clan, so they had been hiding in the 5th residence on the east side of Shuoran Square. Moreover, after walking a short distance from Shuoran Square to the west of the capital, there was Jian Square, and Tongfu Inn was nearby. Taiyuan City had been sealed off for several days now, and anyone with a brain could tell that something major had happened in Taiyuan City. It wasn't just because the government wanted to capture a Turkic spy hiding in the city. There had to be something else that the common folk did not know about, or else the government wouldn't have sealed off the city gates for so many days. Moreover, Li Junxian had sent his army yesterday to surround Tongfu Inn in a radius of 1 li around it. He had ordered all the shops in the area to help seal it off, and only the common folk of Tongfu Inn were allowed to enter. As a result, the area around Tongfu Inn had become a restricted zone, and ordinary people found it very difficult to enter or leave. Tongfu Inn was the largest inn in Taiyuan City, but it had not received any guests in the last few days. Moreover, it was rumored that Tongfu Inn had been occupied by an unknown group of people. Thus, the well-informed people of Taiyuan City knew that Tongfu Inn was not peaceful at the moment. However, very few people were able to explain exactly what kind of unpeaceful situation it was. Some people speculated that the spy the government wanted to capture was hiding in Tongfu Inn, but this theory was simply untenable. If the spy was in Tongfu Inn, why hadn't the government just sent an army to capture him? Some people also speculated that some important figure was living in Tongfu Inn, so the common folk were not allowed to get close. But if there really was someone of that level, they wouldn't be living in an inn. All sorts of speculations. I heard this morning that the Puguang Temple is going to hold a Dharma assembly in the small market west of the Tongfu Inn to preach to the people. What? Did the Puguang Temple want to hold a meeting in Jian Square? This was a rare opportunity. Who doesn't know that the eminent monks of the Puguang Temple have profound Dharma? That's right. The Puguang Temple rarely holds spiritual gatherings, so we can't miss it this time. The Puguang Temple was built during the Jinan period of the Han Dynasty. It had a long history and was the most famous and largest ancient temple in Taiyuan City. There were many senior monks in the temple, and the incense was flourishing. Moreover, there were many believers among the common people. When Li Yuan was still the king of Tang in Taiyuan, he often took his wife to the Puguang temple to offer incense. Later, old Li's family won the country, and the status of the Puguang temple among the people was even higher. Usually, there was an endless stream of people going to the temple to offer incense. Occasionally, there would be monks from the Puguang temple preaching to the people. Every time at this time, there would be no empty seats, like a grand event. Hee hee. I heard that for this Dharma assembly, the host of the Puguang temple also invited a divine monk from India, whose Dharma name is Du Nan. It is said that this divine monk not only has profound Dharma, but also can help people who are seriously ill get rid of disasters, get rid of diseases, and ward off evil spirits. What? Get rid of disasters, get rid of diseases, and ward off evil spirits? Is it really so magical? Chapter 2188. Leader Yun Xia. There are suddenly many monks outside the square, as well as people from other squares. In the hall on the first floor of Tongfu Inn, a thin man dressed in tight clothes walked in and bowed to Yun Xia, who was sitting by the bed. Many monks? And people from other squares? Yun Xia frowned. He was now in a tight encirclement, and his generals, Xian Yi and Sky Eagle, had both fallen into the hands of the Taiyuan government. Therefore, Yun Xia was extremely sensitive at this moment. When he heard that a group of monks and people had suddenly appeared outside Jian and Square, he immediately realized that something was wrong. He seemed to smell a conspiracy. He quickly stood up, looked at the subordinate in front of him, and asked in a deep voice, "Why are there so many monks for no reason? Are they sent by the government? Do they want to take back the king of Wei from the inn?" It was no wonder that Yun Xia liked to think blindly. Their current situation was so precarious that if they were not careful, they would lose everything. As a secret agent of the Wolf Guard, it did not matter if they died, but what about their families in the grasslands? One could foresee that if they did not complete their mission and died in the Central Plains, then what awaited their families would be a very miserable fate. Therefore, Yun Xia could not be careless. "It's the monks from the Puguang temple. I heard that there will be a Dharma assembly in the small market west of the inn in the afternoon. The people from other squares all wanted to hear the monks from the Puguang temple preach the sutras, so they came here." The Turkic spy hurriedly replied. Obviously, he had done some work before he came back to report to Yun Xia. "The Puguang temple is going to hold a Dharma assembly here?" Yun Xia muttered suspiciously. Then, he said with a sullen face, "No. Why would the Puguang temple hold a Dharma assembly at this time? And it just so happened that they chose this place to hold the Dharma assembly? There must be a conspiracy behind this. Could it be that there are experts from the imperial court among the people who came to listen to the Dharma assembly? They want to use this opportunity to sneak into the inn and rescue the king of Wei? Huh. These officials are really despicable. Brother, I will bring people to chase away those stinky monks from the Puguang temple now." Not far away, Twilight Flood Dragon heard this and immediately glared. He rolled up his sleeves angrily and was about to go out to fight. "Stop." Cloud Scorpion hurriedly stopped Dusk Wyrm when he heard this. Perhaps Dusk Wyrm wouldn't listen to anyone else, but it was a different story if it was Cloud Scorpion. Dusk Wyrm stopped moving when he heard this, and then he turned around to look at Cloud Scorpion. Cloud Scorpion frowned and said, "Get a clear understanding of the situation first. If you rush out so recklessly, you might fall into the trap of the authorities again." Most importantly, Li Tai was now in their hands. As long as they held tightly onto this trump card, no matter what the government was up to, they would be invincible. Cloud Scorpion added inwardly. Therefore, although Cloud Scorpion felt that the monks of the Puguang temple had come here to hold a Dharma conference, he did not panic because they still had a trump card, a very powerful trump card. Yesterday, the government sent troops to surround all the residential areas near Tongfu Inn and strictly limited the access of the people. Now that so many people have suddenly come in, there must be a problem. Let me ask you, are there any officials among the people who entered the workshop? Tell me in detail about the situation at the gate. Cloud Scorpion glanced at Dusk Wyrm and asked the Turkic spy who reported the news. Chief Cloud Scorpion, among the people who entered the workshop, there were no officials or people from the Bing province barracks. However, before those people entered the workshop, they had to register at the gate. After registration, the guards at the gate would let them in. Chapter 2189. Adjunctly, may I know why you called us here today? In the tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zishuan sat at the head of the table. On his left and right sat Zhang Shigui, the lieutenant of the A camp, Gao Gong, the lieutenant of the C camp, Lu De, the lieutenant of the D camp, and the lieutenant of the E camp, Sun Jiping. Zhang Shigui took the initiative to ask after seeing that almost everyone had arrived. He was the most senior here. The others might be afraid of Li Zishuan's power and favor, but he wasn't. Therefore, he could only ask. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Brother Zhang, Gao Gong, Jiping, Lu De, I called you here today because I need your cooperation on two things. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. After yesterday's army fighting competition, as the biggest dark horse, the Wu battalion won against all the other battalions. On one hand, it proved the superiority of Li Zishuan's new drill. On the other hand, Li Zishuan's relationship with the captains of the 4 battalions had become closer. Therefore, he didn't address the 4 of them by their positions. He wanted to get closer to them. After all, he was an adjunct of the Black Armored Army. If he wanted to work normally in the Black Armored Army in the future, he couldn't do without their cooperation. Of course, this was mainly for Zhang Shigui and Lu De. As for Sun Jiping and Gao Gong, they had already followed Li Zishuan's lead. What is it? As long as it's within our power, we will definitely cooperate with Adjunct Li. Zhang Shigui's eyes flashed. After a moment of silence, he smiled and said. His mind became active as he tried to guess what Li Zishuan was talking about, that they needed to cooperate with him. Could it be that it was about the competition between the E camp and the B camp in 2 days? But that was a matter between the B camp and the E camp. What could the A camp and D camp do to help? Shaking his head, Zhang Shigui quickly denied this conjecture. That's right. As long as it's within our power, we will definitely cooperate with Adjunct Li. Lu De also clasped his fist and said. Even Zhang Shigui had expressed his support for Li Zishuan. He didn't need to get on Li Zishuan's bad side. He didn't have a deep hatred for Li Zishuan like Qiu Xingong. On the contrary, he had a good relationship with Li Zishuan. In yesterday's combat competition, the D camp even do a favor to the E camp. Sun Jiping and Gao Gong also nodded. Although they didn't speak, it was a statement. The 2 of them were hardcore supporters of Li Zishuan. This was also the reason why Li Zishuan didn't invite the captains of the B camp. After all, the B camp was still under Qiu Xingong's control. If they were called over, they would definitely oppose any of Li Zishuan's suggestions unconditionally. It would simply be adding to the chaos. Seeing this, Li Zishuan said, the first thing is that I want to select a group of literate soldiers from each camp. After training, each camp will have a night class for 3 hours between the hour of Su to quarter of Haoshi. The main content of the night class will be for these literate soldiers to teach the other soldiers how to read. Teach the soldiers how to read? Hearing this, Zhang Shigui frowned and couldn't help but say, Adjunct Li, don't blame me for being straightforward. Most of the soldiers in the army only know how to wield spears and swords. Teaching them to read is harder than killing them. Besides, the main purpose of being a soldier is to fight, not to take the imperial examinations. Why do they need to be literate? Chapter 2190. Special Combat Team? May I ask how many people there are in this special combat team? What is its purpose? Who will be in charge of it after that? Inside the tent, Zhang Shigui asked in a deep voice after hearing Li Zishuan say that he was going to transfer the elites from each battalion to form a special combat team. What he asked were the most important and crucial questions. According to Li Zishuan, the members of this special combat team must be the strongest in each battalion. Although all 5 battalions of the Black Armored Army belonged to the Black Armored Army and were loyal to the imperial court and the emperor, and Zhang Shigui never had the thought of having soldiers for himself, as a general, no one would be willing to see their elite soldiers being poached to other places. This was different from when Li Zishuan had transferred the literate soldiers from the various camps to teach all the soldiers how to read. This had already touched upon the core interests of the generals of the various camps. Even if Zhang Shigui had a good impression of Li Zishuan, he wouldn't be so selfless as to hand over the powerful soldiers under his command. Therefore, regarding the ownership of the special combat team, Zhang Shigui had to ask Li Zishuan in advance. Gao Gong pursed his lips and didn't say anything. He was only the deputy general of the 3rd Battalion, and the current lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion was Li Zishuan. No matter who the special combat team belonged to, he had no right to object. He only needed to listen to Li Zishuan's orders. As for Sun Jiping, although he was Li Zishuan's loyal follower, he was still hesitant about this matter. After all, this was already related to his core interests. If Li Zishuan took away all the elite forces of the 5th Battalion, how would the 5th Battalion fight in the future? As for Lu De, although he had the same concerns as Zhang Shigui, he didn't ask about it. He only looked at Li Zishuan silently. Ha! Brother Zhang, that's a good question. Li Zishuan chuckled. In truth, he was already prepared for Zhang Shigui's question. Or perhaps it could be said that when he had gathered Zhang Shigui and the others for this meeting, he had already predicted that they would encounter this kind of question. First of all, regarding the number of people in the special forces, I plan to select 30 agile and powerful soldiers from each battalion for the first batch of members. They must be the most elite and powerful soldiers in each battalion. As for whether or not the special forces will expand in the future, that will be another matter for the time being. Secondly, what was the role of the special forces? As the name suggests, the special forces are specially prepared for special battles. After each battalion has confirmed the members of the special forces, I plan to gather them all in one place and train them together. In my opinion, everyone's potential is limitless. Although the daily training in the new drill is very heavy, for some of the elites in each battalion, it is more than enough for them to handle the daily training. We need to squeeze out their potential and explore their limits. Therefore, the daily training of the special forces will be many times more than normal soldiers. They must endure pain that normal people can't and complete tasks that normal people can't. Only then will they dare to fight battles that normal people don't dare to fight and win. This is the role of the special forces. Many times, 100 elite special forces team can reduce the number of casualties by thousands or even tens of thousands. In terms of attacking and ambushing, the special forces team can achieve unexpected results. Actually, Li Zishuan had the idea of forming a special forces team a long time ago. However, at the start, he only wanted to select from the Wu Battalion. After all, in the entire Black Armored Army, only the Wu Battalion was willing to follow him. However, Li Zishuan's military career in the Black Armored Army was unexpectedly smooth. Currently, in the entire Black Armored Army, other than the E Battalion, the other 4 battalions didn't have any ill feelings towards him and had all accepted his new drill. Under such circumstances, if he endure pain that normal people can't endure, complete tasks that normal people can't complete, fight battles that normal people don't dare to fight, hearing this, Zhang Shigui couldn't help but feel his blood boil. He licked his lips and praised. Chapter 2191. You're saying that Li Zishuan gathered the generals of the A, C, D and E battalions for a secret meeting? In a corner of the Black Armored Army drill ground, Qiu Xingong was inspecting the drill ground. Sun Tao, the lieutenant of the B battalion, hesitated for a moment before telling Qiu Xingong what he knew. Hearing this, Qiu Xingong frowned. At the same time, a sense of vigilance rose in his heart. After a moment of silence, he frowned and asked, "Do you know why Li Zishuan gathered them?" Sun Tao shook his head and said, "Li Zishuan's men are guarding outside his tent. Our men can't get close, so we have no way of knowing what they are discussing." Zhang Kongnian had been beheaded, and now Sun Tao had become Qiu Xingong's #1 general, as well as the only general. Even so, Sun Tao did not feel any joy. Instead, he felt a kind of sadness at the end of his road. Right now, he was reporting this to Qiu Xingong, but it was just a routine matter. It was not that he wanted to target Li Zishuan. The day after tomorrow is the competition between the B and E battalions. He gathered the generals of the other battalions at this time. Could it be that he wants to ask for help from the other battalions? Qiu Xingong rolled his eyes and quickly thought of a possibility. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his guess was close to the truth. Thus, he said to Qiu Xingong, "Send more men to watch over the E battalion. If you discover any experts from the other battalion sneaking into the E battalion, report to me immediately." From Qiu Xingong's point of view, Li Zixuan's sudden abnormal action on the eve of the final battle was definitely to cheat in the competition with the B battalion. As for the method of cheating, it was very simple. It was to ask for help from the A battalion, C battalion and D battalion. The Black Armored Army had 1,000 men in each battalion. Among these 1,000 men, it wasn't that eye-catching to have a dozen experts mixed in. However, in the competition, it was very likely that the addition of these 10 experts could change the outcome of the battle. Li Zixuan is an upright person. He wouldn't use such a despicable method, right? Furthermore, during the competition, His Majesty and the officials of the court will be sitting in the celestial lantern to observe the battle. If someone from the other battalions sneaked into the E battalion, it should be easy to find out. Why would Li Kanjun take such a big risk? Hearing Qiu Xingong's guess, Sun Tao did not take it to heart. He did not believe that Li Zixuan was such a person. Qiu Xingong was instantly enraged when he heard that. What do you know? There are so many people in each battalion. If a dozen or so people from the other battalions were to sneak in, who would notice? Li Zixuan definitely did not have the confidence to win against the 2nd Battalion, so he decided to take the risk out of desperation. As long as we can get hold of his weakness, our 2nd Battalion will be able to win this competition without having to fight. Follow my instructions and keep an eye on the Wu Battalion for the next 2 days. After Li Er's warning yesterday, Qiu Xingong indeed didn't dare to secretly cause trouble for Li Zixuan anymore. This was because if Li Er were to find out, he would very likely be expelled from the royal court, or even lose his life. However, Qiu Xingong thought that if he couldn't use underhanded tactics, it didn't mean that he couldn't use overt tactics. Once he found evidence that Li Zixuan had secretly asked for external help to cheat, and exposed it, Li Zixuan would no longer have a foothold in the Black Armored Army. By then, even Li Er wouldn't be able to say anything. Li Zixuan could only leave the Black Armored Army with his tail between his legs. However, what he didn't know was that Li Zixuan wasn't even worried that the Wu Battalion would lose to the 2nd Battalion. He had even completely ignored this matter and was planning for something more long-term, the Special Forces and the Signalers. On the other hand, the soldiers of the 5th Battalion didn't care about the competition the day after tomorrow. Everyone was eating and training as usual. It was as though everyone had forgotten about the competition with the 2nd Battalion the day after tomorrow. Or it could be said that they didn't care about this small matter anymore. Yes. Sun Tao clenched his teeth and wanted to say something. However, in the end, he didn't say anything. He just responded and turned to leave. He knew that even if he said something, the obstinate and self-opinionated Qiu Xingong wouldn't listen to him. Since that was the case, he might as well not say anything. Actually, even though he didn't say anything, he didn't really care about Qiu Xingong's guess. As the lieutenant of the 2nd Battalion, he knew his own situation. In the past, Sun Tao was very confident that the 2nd Battalion would win against the Wu Battalion. However, now, after experiencing the martial arts competition the day before, he didn't dare to underestimate the Wu Battalion. Even though he didn't understand how the Wu Battalion could improve so quickly, it was an indisputable fact that the Wu Battalion and the A Battalion were equally matched in the arena. This meant that the Wu Battalion now had the ability to challenge the A Battalion. As for the 2nd Battalion, even if the 2nd Battalion was at its peak, it wouldn't have the chance to win against the A Battalion. Not to mention the 2nd Battalion that had already lost all morale after the martial arts competition the day before. On one side, the morale was high and their abilities had increased tremendously. On the other side, the morale was low and their abilities didn't improve at all. When these two sides fought, it was obvious who would win and who would lose. Hence, Sun Tao didn't think that Li Zixuan would invite reinforcements from other battalions. It was completely unnecessary and superfluous. It might even be risky. However, Qiu Xingong insisted that he send people to keep an eye on the Wu battalion. What else could he do as a tool? He could only do as he was told. Actually, Sun Tao didn't like Qiu Xinggong's way of doing things. Previously, there was Zhang Kongnian, who was a bootlicker. The dirty and tiring jobs that Qiu Xinggong had assigned to him were all done by Zhang Kongnian. Sun Tao didn't actually participate much in it. However, Zhang Kongnian was beheaded for inciting the soldiers to mutiny. Hence, the dirty and tiring jobs that he had done could only be taken over by Sun Tao. This was something that he had no choice but to do. Sun Tao had also thought of leaving Qiu Xinggong and joining Li Zishuan or Duan Jishuan. However, Qiu Xinggong was the founding general of the country and had great power. Furthermore, he was indebted to Qiu Xinggong. Even if he joined Li Zishuan or Duan Jishuan, the other party wouldn't dare to accept him. Hence, he could only join Qiu Xinggong for good or for ill. Cough cough, no, it should be that he could only fall and not be honored. From Sun Tao's point of view, in the battle between Qiu Xinggong and Li Zishuan, Qiu Xinggong had already fallen into a disadvantageous position. There was no way he could turn the tables around. The battle between the 2nd and Wu battalions the day after tomorrow would most likely be Qiu Xinggong's final battle. After this battle, Qiu Xinggong would most likely have to leave the Black Armored Army for good. As for him, Qiu Xinggong's little brother, he could only follow Qiu Xinggong's battered ship and sink to the bottom of the sea. Little Ku, did something happen in Taiyuan? The academy, Yan Silu's office. Li Ku had thought that Yan Silu had called him back to the academy because he had something for him to do. He didn't expect Yan Silu to throw such a deep water bomb at him the moment they met. He didn't even have time to salute and greet Yan Silu. Li Ku's forehead was instantly covered in a layer of cold sweat. Li Tai had been kidnapped by a Turkic spy in Taiyuan. Not many people knew about this, and certainly no one in the academy knew about it. Although the academy had a telegraph and could contact the Yanhuang College teachers and students in Taiyuan at any time, Taiyuan had never reported this matter to the academy. Every time the academy sent a telegram to ask about the situation in Taiyuan, Iron Egg would always reply to the academy with "everything is fine" and "everything is going well." This wasn't because they didn't trust the academy, but because Iron Egg, Mo Chui, and the other teachers of the academy had considered the matter thoroughly. Some of the old teachers in the academy, such as Li Gang, Yan Silu, Mo Huai, and the others, were too old. Previously, when Wu Jia broke into Yunshan Mountain alone, Mr. Li Gang was so shocked that he almost died. Fortunately, Li Zishuan and Xian Qing rushed back from thousands of miles away, and together with Sun Simiao, they pulled Li Gang back from the gates of hell. Although Li Gang was saved in the end, after this incident, the old teacher's health was much worse than before. This matter had become an eternal pain in the hearts of the teachers and students of the academy. So this time, something happened in Taiyuan. After several discussions, Iron Egg, Mo Chui, and the others finally decided not to disclose the news to the academy, even when the news was passed back to the imperial palace. Of course, this decision was also approved by Li Zishuan. They even vaguely asked Li Er not to spread the news. In fact, there was no need for them to remind him. Li Er had no intention of spreading the news anyway, because if too many people knew about this matter, it wouldn't be of any help to the rescue of Li Tai. On the contrary, it would only attract more variables. They were worried that after the old teachers of the academy heard the news, they wouldn't be able to bear it psychologically and would have an accident. It was said that having an old teacher at home was like having a treasure, and the old teachers of the academy were all highly respected people. They were all treasures of the academy. They used their profound knowledge, noble character, and rich life experiences to nurture the students. Losing any one of them would be a great loss to the academy. Was it finally impossible to hide it? Or did Mr. Yen and the others know something? Li Ku smiled bitterly in his heart and couldn't help but frown slightly. He didn't expect that after hiding it for so long, it would finally come to a point where he couldn't hide it anymore. However, he didn't understand where Yan Silla got the news from. Of course, this was not important. The question now was whether he should tell the truth to Yen Silu. No. No. He couldn't take this risk. Thinking about how Li Gang was in a critical condition and almost died, Li Ke shook his head inwardly and made a decision in his heart. Even if he had to lie and deceive people, he had to first stabilize Yen Silu. Mr. Kong Gui, everything is fine in Taiyuan. There hasn't been any accident. After a moment of hesitation and conflict, Li Ke calmed down and his expression returned to normal. He saluted Yen Silu and said. Yen Silu shook his head. He had caught the hesitation and conflict on Li Ke's face just now. This further confirmed his guess. After a moment of silence, he said, I heard that this morning you met with the 9 Hu merchants in Chang'an City. Immediately after, the Yanhuang Bank cut off all financial transactions with the merchants of the Yin Kingdom and the Kang Kingdom. Could it be that the 9 Hu merchants were also involved in the crisis of Taiyuan City? It was said that the older one was, the wiser one became. Yen Silu had been in court all his life. What kind of people had he not seen? What kind of things had he not encountered? Although Li Ke was far more shrewd than his peers, he was still incomparably immature in front of Yen Silu. Although Li Ke didn't admit it personally and even flatly denied it, Yen Silu still concluded that something had happened in Taiyuan City. He didn't give Li Ke a chance to refute. Li Ke's little face was pale. He didn't expect Yen Silu to deduce so much from this little information. He also didn't expect things to develop to this point. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer Yen Silu's question. Ah! Something really did happen. In an instant, Yen Silu seemed to have aged a few years. If he had only been guessing before, now that he saw Li Ke's appearance, he could basically conclude that something had happened in Taiyuan City. Seeing this, Li Ke couldn't help but feel grief in his heart. Mr. Kong Gui, but before he could say anything to comfort him, Yen Silu waved his hand and interrupted him. With a calm expression, he asked, Can you tell me who exactly is in trouble in Taiyuan City? Is there a way to save them? Don't worry, this old man's body is still strong. I can hold on. Although Yen Silu's expression was very calm, the attentive Li Ke still noticed that the old man's fists were clenched so tightly that his fingernails were embedded in his flesh. Because he was using too much force, his fists were also trembling slightly. Li Ke knew that the old man was forcibly suppressing his inner emotions. He also knew that he couldn't continue to be passive like this. Otherwise, if the old man were to make wild guesses on his own, it would probably be even more exhausting and unbearable. Li Ke took a deep breath. His bright eyes met Yen Silu's somewhat cloudy and moist eyes. At this moment, his childish face was far more mature than his peers. After meeting Yen Silu's gaze, Li Ke first cupped his hands and then said with a serious expression, Mr. Kong Gui, something has happened in Taiyuan City. Mr. Kong Gui, something did happen in Taiyuan. The reason why I didn't tell you and Mr. Wenji was because I didn't want you to worry about everything. Although you have guessed some things now, I'm afraid this student can't tell you the specific situation over there. However, this student can assure you that the crisis in Taiyuan City will soon be resolved. The Imperial Court and Yamacho have both taken action. I believe that the teachers and students of the academy will definitely return safely. Hearing this, Yen Silu's tightly clenched fists finally relaxed. He asked with a nervous expression, You're not lying to me this time? Li Ke said with a look of shame, I had no choice but to lie to you before. However, what I said just now is all true. The crisis in Taiyuan City is really going to be resolved soon. Yen Silu nodded. His body was finally able to lean back and lean against the back of the chair. He was also able to exhale lightly. After a long silence, Yen Silu regained his senses and asked, Mountainhead, do you know about this matter? Li Ke nodded and said, Yamacho has always known. Moreover, Yamacho has also made some arrangements in Taiyuan City, so Mr. Kong Gui doesn't have to worry too much. Yamacho can still sit firmly in the army at this moment because the situation in Taiyuan City is still under his control. Otherwise, Yamacho would have already gone to Taiyuan City. Also, didn't Mr. Kong Gui notice that one person is missing from Yunshan City recently? One person is missing? Yen Silu was startled when he heard this. After thinking for a while, he finally came back to his senses and said, "It's him? Yamacho is really making the best use of people. With him in Taiyuan, this old man can more or less rest assured." After muttering to himself for a while, Yen Silu came back to his senses and looked at Li Ku. "All right. Since you don't want to talk about the situation in Taiyuan City, this old man won't force you. I'm sure there are still many things to do in the bank. Little Ku, you can go back to work." His tone was no longer as heavy as before. It even had a hint of relaxation. "Then this student will take his leave." Li Ku cupped his hands and then said worriedly, "I hope Mr. Kong Gui can keep this matter a secret, especially from Teacher Wenji." Yen Silla nodded and said, "Don't worry, this old man knows the importance of this matter." Li Ku cupped his hands and left. After walking out of the office, Li Ku realized that his back was covered in a layer of cold sweat. He thought to himself that he didn't mess things up. Things were still under control.